Gopana Shai Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai ISKCON Hillsborough Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktavind Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Hare Krishna. Welcome, Prabhuji. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, in our talk show format, we always select a new host who is going to be hosting our talk show. And this time we selected one of our very shining youth of our new Goloka community. Advaita Chandra is going to be the host for this talk show. So without further ado, I would like to hand on the mic to Advaita Chandra.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humblest obeisances. Just wanted to say that I'm more or less a third generation devotee and very new to Krishna consciousness. And I got this wonderful opportunity to interview Prabhu. So nice to see you, Prabhu.
Very nice.
So I ask for all of your blessings that I'm able to do this seva best. And yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presence. Please bless me that I can do this very nicely. So as we know, Prabhu was a personal servant of Srila Prabhupada. And Shruti Kirti Prabhu. He was born in Philadelphia, USA, and as a child he was raised in the Catholic faith, serving as an altar boy. 20 years later, he majored in business studies and sociology at LaSalle University, and his spiritual quest led him to join the Hare Krishna movement. He received training at the New Vrindavan Farm Community in West Virginia, and within a year, his service attitude and humble demeanor had prompted an invitation to become the personal servant of Srila Prabhupada. Wow. Over the next 2.5 years, he accompanied His Divine Grace on his preaching mission all over the world. After leaving this personal service, he married and managed a number of Govinda's restaurants. He was also temple president in Hawaii. So very grateful to have Prabhu here. And we have a series of 8 questions.
Okay.
To ask you about.
They didn't tell me the questions beforehand, and I have no teleprompter, so
Prabhu, we want to hear from your heart.
this will be spontaneous.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, we want to hear those wonderful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, whatever you'd like to share, whatever you... and we'll start off first, though.
Start out, yes.
With how did you start your journey of Krishna consciousness? And how did it exactly lead you to getting this blessed opportunity to serve Srila Prabhupada as his personal servant?
It's a big question. It's a lot of... All right. You gave a little bit of my history going back. I was thinking this would be asked, and I was wondering to give you the short answer or the longer answer, because it started with my birth. My first guru. Who's your first guru?
My parents.
Your mother. Mother is considered the first guru. And my father died when I was 3. I have no recollection of him. So she was Italian Catholic. I had 2 older sisters and a mother. So that's what I learned from birth. I learned to be a caretaker because I was surrounded by women. No men, no father coming home from work, sitting in a couch watching TV or whatever. So that was I realized not too long ago, that was a big influence in my life, that ability to be a servant. And as you said, I became an altar boy at Catholic school. I was ringing bells. I was 8 years old. I was ringing bells. So I was Pujari in the church. Yeah, for starters. Anyway, then I went through that, high school, all boys high school, Father Judge High School. And then I went to LaSalle College. And in my second year, I started out, the first year, I was majoring in marketing, accounting, all business. Something my daughter can relate to. Business. We were all business. But this was 1970, 1971. Oh, big changes. Those of you who are old enough, you would know probably more changes in that time than up until this time. Also lots of changes going on very quickly. And many of us, we rejected our parents' idea of what success was. Have a nice house, the white picket fence, all those things. But we grew up with all of that, and all of a sudden I wasn't happy. That actually happened very quickly. And due to good fortune or whatever, growing up, I started to pray to God because I found myself being very unhappy. I had everything. I had a car, driving to school every day. I had a scholarship, work scholarship, so everything was paid. So there was really no problems, but internally I just became really troubled. And I had a friend, and I started going, I even went to born-again Christian meetings. Here in the South, you should know what that's like. Huh? Go to like Baptist thing, and these people were singing and dancing and speaking in tongues. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to know God. Books, I just wanted to go right, do something. If you're here, if you're listening, you have to do something. And I couldn't, the born-again Christian, I couldn't feel the Holy Spirit. That's what they were, They said the Holy Spirit. We say Paramatma, right? So I had a little understanding, and I accepted God as a person. Even Prabhupada says Christians are Vaishnavas. They believe God's a person. They don't know who the person is. Am I taking too long on these questions? And I remember we had a catechism, and they even had a picture of God sitting in a big chair, kind of looked like Abraham Lincoln in this. But he had no face, because they don't know the face. They don't know the name, who God is. But they know there's that much they accepted from Jesus Christ. And then I just started getting more intent. I would literally go to bed at night, and I had rosary beads, which I never used in my life, and I started praying on them. I was very serious because I was considered that I was suffering. And then, like I say, I had a friend. We were both seekers at that time. He was a year older than me, also in LaSalle College. Anyway, it was Earth Day, April 22nd. Those of you who are familiar with Earth Day. The first one was 1970. Second one was 1971. And my friend and I went to a concert in the park in Philadelphia, big Fairmount Park, beautiful city park. And we went there. There were rock bands, and lots of smoke, all that things were there going on. And we were just sitting there, and down there was a spot called Belmont Plateau. So it was down a bit. And there was about a dozen really crazy looking people. And, the men all had shaved heads, the women, and everyone wore saris and dhotis that color. That's when they would buy the cloth at the store and just cut it, and that was your sari, and it became the dhoti and your shawl, your chadar. And they were chanting. Diva Shakti was there, and her husband at that time, who was temple president. And my friend kept saying, let's go see them. And of course I was like, no way. I said, they're like from outer space, these people. They had tilak made out of fuller's earth. And if you know, involved in construction work, fuller's earth is kind of what you put spackle on when you do your... So it was very first class because it never came off all day long. Anyway, I had a lot of questions. I even tried reading into the Bible, and I couldn't make any sense of what was going on there because I had no teacher. Anyway, he convinced me. We went down, and we went up to this one guy, and he was my age, about 20. I was 19 years old. So he was about the same, and he had probably been a devotee for 2 months. So I approached him and I said, what's going on? And of course he said, we're chanting Hare Krishna in the name of God. I said, so this is God, we're chanting the holy name, which from the Bible I understood, Psalms, it's all about chanting, playing cymbals. They talk about that all the time. So I started asking him questions. And like every Hare Krishna, he had all the answers. Who is God? Oh, his name is Krishna. So he told me God's name, he told me his mother's name, his father's name, his friend's name, where he lived, his phone number, everything I found just like that. And somehow by Krishna's mercy, I accepted everything. We both did. And we went to the temple after school every day in Philly for the next week. In the middle of the week, Kirtanananda came, and he was plucking people from temples to take them to New Vrindavan, and he plucked us. So on a Saturday, 6 days later, we got on a train from Philly, and we went to Pittsburgh, and got picked up, moved into the temple, and we shaved our heads that day. And 2 days later, I was temple commander.
Haribol!
Everyone... a few days after that, I was in charge of the shipping department for Spiritual Sky Incense because I was in the shipping department where I worked up until then. So everything just fell together. And ever since, I've had no problem accepting everything that's in the Shastra or what Prabhupada said. So that's my very simple nature, I guess. I was inquisitive, but I thought I found the truth. And I would sit in the temple room. They had a picture of Vishvarupa, the universal form, if you remember the old, when you have Vishnu and then all the, and I would chant so intently and look and meditate on, and I wanted to see him move. Probably hallucination. I saw him moving every now and then because I was staring. So that was the beginning, and then I went to New Vrindavan. So I was always under Kirtanananda's tutelage. 3 months later to the day, I got initiated in Brooklyn, New York, Henry Street Temple.
Haribol.
Yeah. Every day, 10 people were getting initiated. Every day, fire jagya. Prabhupada would chant on all the beads. And so that's how it started. And then in New Vrindavan, I also went on the road show, if you knew what the road show was, if you ever heard about the first Transcendental Road Show with Kirtanananda, and then Vishnu John took over. That was where Mangalananda made all these songs you hear still 50 years later. And May 72, I went to Los Angeles to get Brahmin initiation from Srila Prabhupada. And there I got his personal association every day in the garden in the afternoon and every morning on the walk because I was with Kirtanananda. Like they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? There's only one way to become a devotee. What is that? From a devotee. You cannot become a devotee unless you get it from a devotee. The only way you can become a devotee is a devotee gives you Krishna. So, then I became very attached. I was in the garden. I was reading Krishna book to Prabhupada every day. One day he called me Sutta Goswami because I was reading Krishna book every day. So he was very practical and encouraging Prabhupada. And then I went back to New Vrindavan, so that was May. And immediately now I was put in charge of the kitchen, which means you're the only person in the kitchen, Like here, you're in charge of the kitchen, means you do everything, in those days. And then in August, Prabhupada came, 1972, very famous Vyas Puja, Janmastami in New Vrindavan, Prabhupada there. And I became really upset. Radhanath Swami loves to tell this story. He was in the kitchen with me. We were cooking for hundreds while Prabhupada was there. So I was in charge of the kitchen cooking. Radhanath Swami was rolling chapatis. He came down from the Vrindavan farm. And there was one other devotee there. Anyone know who it was? Bir Krishna Maharaj. Yes. Bir Krishna. I believe he was Grahasta at the time probably. So he was also an assistant at that time. And as you can see, both of them have risen to the top while I'm still languishing here. But still here by Prabhupada's mercy. So that's the short story. So I was really upset. And as Kirtanananda says, my tears made the khichdi sweeter that I was cooking for all the devotees. He's pretty dramatic, Maharaj. And I was upset because I thought I was going to see Prabhupada every day, attend his classes, go on the walk, and I didn't get to do any of it because I was in the temple. And the night before Prabhupada left, 8 o'clock in the evening, he came into the room at his cane, Kirtanananda, and he said, "You want to be Prabhupada's servant?" And I said, "Yes."
Hare Krishna.
And 5 o'clock the following morning, I was introduced to him by Kirtanananda. He said, "This is Shruta Kirti." He said, "He's a very good cook, but he doesn't know how to massage." Prabhupada said, "Anyone can massage." Which that wasn't true. He was very particular about everything. Massage, cooking, eat, everything. Most particular. But at that time, he was very kind to me. He didn't want to frighten me away. Is that a good?
Beautiful.
Good enough?
Beautiful. Very nice. It was really nice to see how, Krishna essentially trapped you. And one thing after another, Krishna gave his mercy. You got in touch with many devotees and Srila Prabhupada as well. And when you first got darshan of Srila Prabhupada, what was that one quality or one aspect of Srila Prabhupada that attracted you? And how did that, essentially mature when you served him personally? And what aspect continuously, what aspect is very dear to your heart that still stays with you, that is keeping you alive and enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness till date of Srila Prabhupada?
Understanding his loyalty to his disciples. There's so many, I've always been asked which quality, every quality of Prabhupada's is, topmost, summit qualities. But as what I've seen over time is the loyalty of the Guru. It's eternal. It's eternal. He'll never abandon you. Never. We can abandon the Guru, but he'll never abandon you. So knowing that, over the last 50 years with all my ups and downs and whatever, I always knew Prabhupada is always there if we just surrender. We just surrender. And I see it more and more as time goes by. Krishna arranges everything. I saw the plaque on the way in here, the little wooden thing. Sarvadharman Prityaja Mamekam Saranam Braja. So that's the process. And gradually, hopefully, just like Apurva Prabhu, he knows. Krishna provides. That's why we're here, because, whatever happens, he takes care of everything. So that I've understood. And Prabhupada told me that I should never leave, because one of his servants left, he said, when he was talking about the moon. And he said to me very seriously one night, he said, "My servant?" I said, "We didn't go to the moon." He said, "He left." And he looked at me, he said, "You're not going to leave, are you?" I said, "No, Prabhupada, I don't care about the moon." went to the moon, didn't go to the moon, none of that mattered to me. It was more things were important.
So beautiful, so sweet. That loyalty to the disciples, such a beautiful point that also we can imbibe in our hearts, that the Guru Janas and our dear Diksha Gurus, we should reciprocate, we should be with them, because they will never leave us. So
It's-
we should reciprocate in some way, to
Yes.
some extent.
Chastity is most
Yes.
important in spiritual life.
Hmm.
Yes.
And what was your most memorable moment in your personal service to Srila Prabhupada?
Most memorable moment. That's a tough one. I've been fortunate to repeat memories enough that I have a lot of memories. They're all wonderful memories. I wouldn't even know what to say. So many things come to mind.
What comes to mind first, Prabhu?
Well, I will tell you my favorite one,
Yes, please.
because Prabhupada gave me a blessing. So that's my favorite, because to get a blessing from your guru, nothing more you could want. So I had been his servant for a year, personal servant. Main thing, so many main things. You were very busy. You had no private life at all. You were literally in your room 24 hours a day. Wasn't allowed to go anywhere. Wasn't allowed to go to Mangal Artik. He chastised me for going to Mangal Artik. He said I was the only person in ISKCON. I was in Maya. Because I went to Mangal Artik. I still sometimes use that as my excuse in Vrindavan. So Prabhupada told me I'm not allowed to go to Mangal Artik. But, so a year, so we're in Bhaktivedanta Manor, which was a very beautiful place, Bhaktivedanta Manor. You've all seen it, Prabhupada's rooms. His sitting room is this big in Bhaktivedanta Manor, very beautiful, overlooking a couple acres of lawn and a lake. And he would take massage right in front of the windows overlooking the garden, because the sun would come in. So, noontime, 11 o'clock or so. And I've been doing it for a year. And I had, certain things I traveled with. I say, like, I had my friends, sandalwood oil, mustard oil, and Prabhupada's cooker, I say, was my best friend, because I cooked this entire meal in this cooker. So anyway, I'm massaging his head. What you massage his head with? Sandalwood oil. I just told you, sandalwood and mustard. Sandalwood is what? Cooling. Prabhupada said you have to keep a cool head, right? When the reporter asked Prabhupada, why do you shave your head? He said, why do you shave your legs? She had miniskirt. He said, better keep a cool head and warm legs, he said. So. Anyway, I went from his head, and even massaging each part of his body, you did it until he gave you the signal to move. This is how much you were controlled. We should be controlled by our guru. That's our business. And to do that requires surrender. And again, after so much time, I know what I'm doing. Massage, hour and a half. Sometimes it was 2 hours. Sometimes 1 hour. But at one point I thought, I know. So I'm massaging his head. And then I did that for 15 minutes, and I started massaging his back. So this went on for 3 days. The number 3 is very important in spiritual life. Very important. So on the 3rd day, he didn't say anything. 2 days. The 3rd day, I massaged his head, and I took my hands off of his head. And he's right in front of me. I'm on the floor behind him. And he said, you massage until I tell you you're done, not until you tell you you're done.
Hare Krishna.
So you want to know what it's like to surrender. Find yourself a spiritual master, and he'll teach you what it means to surrender every moment. So anyway, that day I did his head, I did his back. He wouldn't verbally say, he would just go. That head, you have to know what the head movements, right? What they mean. So and then you go. So then I finished the back. He went. So I moved to the side, and I knocked the bottle of mustard oil over on the floor, just like this kind of floor. It was beautiful wooden floor, natural wood floor, and I knocked it over. And Prabhupada was so fast. Hari Sari did the same thing. Before the bottle even fell over, Prabhupada had picked it up. But with me, it didn't happen that way, and the oil went on the floor. So Prabhupada still picked it up. And then he said, "You fool! You'll be intelligent when you're 80.
Hare Krishna.
And then he said, "Do what I'm doing." Or no, that first, I'm sorry, I'm out of turn here. Then he said, "Go get a katuri." So he just chased me out of the room. This is a Bhaktivedanta manner, which meant I went right out of the room, right around the bend, into the closet, which was my kitchen. I cooked in a closet. One burner stove, bucket of water, cooked right there beside Prabhupada's room. He didn't like his servant to wander. He had experience with wandering servants. So I ran into there, I got a katuri, came back. I don't even remember if I offered obeisances. I was so shaken by Prabhupada screaming at me. And then he said, "Do what I'm doing." His very first words to me when I became his servant, he stood up from behind his desk and he said, "Follow me." They were the first words. I'm still trying to implement that plan. Follow me. That's what he said, and I followed him. Then he said, "Stop." So he said, "Follow me. Do what I'm doing." He stuck his hand in the oil and started scraping it into the katuri. So we're both scraping it into the katuri. And he's not talking. You know, and the whole room was like this big cloud in the room. He yelled. I didn't like any. My mother never yelled at me. I didn't have a father. I never knew screaming, yelling. I wasn't familiar with, and I would just become like immobile. My brain would just shut. I wouldn't know what to do. So anyway, we're both doing it, and we get everything we got off the floor. Nice shiny wooden floor. Basically, it all came up. And then he looked at me, said, "Now use that oil to massage me." So that was like another, off the floor. He wanted me to use that oil, which from that I learned a couple things. One was you don't waste anything. The other is he knows really how to turn, make you feel even worse. So we did that, and now I'm massaging him with that oil, and I'm picking out little bits of dust as I'm rubbing his body, and I can feel, dirt particles and things. And he's just sitting there. And you never knew Prabhupada, what he's thinking. No matter what his facial expression was, you don't know what he's thinking. Someone said, "Oh, Prabhupada," they looked at one photo and said, you look so grave here. You look so, he said, "I was in ecstasy then." So you don't know, but we assume, and I assumed he's really, really angry. And my wife can vouch for this. One thing I never say is I'm sorry. With Prabhupada, those words never came out of my mouth. No matter how much I did something wrong, I would never say, "I'm sorry, I'll never do that again." I just get quiet, because that's what would happen to me. I wouldn't know what to do. I can't think. So for the next half hour or more, I'm massaging him, and he's just, he doesn't move anyway, but his eyes are closed, he's sitting, and I'm just, And when I was with Prabhupada, I could speak with him, but I didn't say anything unless I went over in my head 10 times how to ask him a question. And then if you ask him a question, you have to be ready for multiple choice answers, and then you have to know how to answer those answers, So that's how my mind worked. So for the next 40 minutes, I'm going over, and I'm saying, what can I do? What can I say? So now I'm at his feet, lotus feet, and I'm rubbing him. So time's running out. I have to fix this. And I'm rubbing his feet. I'm pulling his toes. And I said, "Prabhupada?" And he goes, I said, "Thank you." I said, "I thought it would take a lot longer for me to become intelligent." And Prabhupada started laughing. And laughing. And I've seen this laugh many times, maybe 4 or 5 times. He would start laughing, and it had stages. So he would laugh, and then we know belly laugh, and then his belly starts, and his whole body's shaking, and he's laughing, and tears are coming down his eyes, and then there's one final step in laughing. The knee slapper, that's the ultimate laughing. When you're slapping your knee, you're crying your body. And Prabhupada, there was no one like him. I never saw anything like this in my life. He was literally out of this world. And then he looked at me. Now he's all happy. He was always happy. And he said to me, yes. He said, when we were young boys, he said, when one of us would do something foolish, we'd all say, you fool, you'll be intelligent when you're 80. He said, and I've used it on you. At the time that happened, I was 22. Now I'm 73. So I have 7 more years. And I take that as a fact. Prabhupada said that because he says anything, it's going to happen, So I figure I'll become intelligent when I'm 80. Until then, you all just have to tolerate whatever comes out of my mouth. Yeah. So that was my favorite because, and one other thing he told me, so these are, like you say, 2.5 years, he never said to me, down the road, do this, do that, if you get married, how many kids, never talked about. I was away for 8 months from Prabhupada. As a brahmachari, I left in LA, I got married. I went back to New Vrindavan in 1974. He came again to New Vrindavan, and again his servant had left him. Satsrup Maharaj, he left him after 6 months. It's not easy. It's wonderful. Nothing worthwhile is easy, And after 8 months, I came back. Brahmananda brought me into the room and said to Prabhupada, so, first Brahmananda asked me, he said, well, you want to be Prabhupada's servant again? And I said, well, now I'm in a little Prabhupada hut in New Vrindavan, literally little hut, Satchrup hut. And I have a wife that's like, I don't know, a couple months pregnant. And Brahmananda said, do you want to come be Prabhupada's servant? And I'm like, where is he going? Because India scared me all the time. So Brahmananda said, well, we're going to India. And I'm like, okay. And it was supposedly to open up Krishna Balaram Mandir, which didn't happen either. So then I looked up the hill at the little Prabhupada hut, and I looked back at Brahmananda, and I said, yeah, I'll come. And I went into Prabhupada's room, and Brahmananda said, so Srutakirti is going to come, be your servant? Prabhupada said, okay. And that was it. He never asked me one word what I did over the last 8 months. It was like they didn't even exist. I was just doing my service. Everything was wonderful. He did his service. I was doing my service. So that's how he didn't talk about mundane things, unnecessary things. He didn't speak. He'd go like that, meant turn on the fans. He didn't, everything was very condensed with Prabhupada. So that was my favorite. So the other one was when he started Chaitanya Charitamrita. That was also 1973 in Los Angeles. I also had a part in that, but we won't tell that story now. And one day came up to me and he said that I should become expert. He said in Chaitanya Charitamrita and give classes. And although I don't, in Vrindavan, that's I actually give classes on Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we have every Monday instead of Srimad Bhagavatam class. But I understood this. What he did give me was, he's also part of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Leela. This Prabhupada is just there. So I figured he gave me that gift. And that's my prayer. Like you had your prayer, my prayer is that he doesn't ever take it away, and despite anything. Yeah. Because there's nothing more enjoyable, huh? Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Those were such sweet, fun, climactic, humorous. Very nice to think about Srila Prabhupada and his wonderful qualities, the way he used to act, the way he used to speak. So sweet. Thank you so much.
He created a family. And of course, they say that historically, as soon as something a group gets over 200, it's very difficult to keep that family atmosphere. Prabhupada did very well while he was with us, traveling 14 times around the world, trying to let everyone understand we're a family, and he loved all of us, and he took care of all of us, and he only wanted the best for all of us. And in order to do that, you have one option: service. He also told me that when I questioned that I didn't feel any love, he said to me, "Do you like your service?" I said, "Oh yes." He said, "Service is love." He said, "Just do your service. Everything will be all right." So that's another thing that's imprinted in my brain.
Thank you so much. Service is love. Yes. Yes, Prabhu.
I saw this, what do you call that? Decibel? Is that a decibel meter? First I thought it was radio stations, but now that I see, we have to bring that to Vrindavan. You don't know what kirtans are like in Vrindavan with like 10 speakers all around, and it's, there's only one volume level in India. Because you always want to get your money's worth. So if you have it on 5, you're only getting half your money's worth. So they turn it up to 10 all the time.
I'll repeat the question. Apurva Prabhu is asking if Shrutikirti Prabhu can repeat and speak more about Srila Prabhupada's loyalty to his disciples. Yes, Prabhu?
Were you done your 8 questions?
There are a few more. Yeah, there are 4 more.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we'll get back in there, but that's okay.
Okay, sure, bro. So, as we can see, Prabhu has written this beautiful book, What is the Difficulty? There's many short pastimes, beautiful pastimes. And if you could tell us the pastime from how this title came up. What is the difficulty?
Okay. Yeah, I started writing, like you say, they're all short stories. They are. There's like 150 very short, because my attention span. I never imagined I was writing a book. I never thought. Even Brahmananda said to me, "I never knew you were a writer." I said, "Either did I." But I started around 1996, and I got on AOL, America Online, back then. And, there was so much, way back in the beginning. Prabhupada, when they asked Prabhupada about putting telex in the temples, anyone know? Older people might know what telex is. That was one of the very first, kind of like Western Union. You could literally type something in Los Angeles at the temple and it would go right to Vrindavan. That's telex. So some of the devotees, they were saying, in order for things in ISKCON to go smoothly, Prabhupada, we can put these telex machines in the temples. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, they'll just use it for gossip. Which anyone that goes on social media knows, to get through all the gossip, very difficult. So he knew then, and he forbade it, the telex machines. He said no. A couple times he was asked, he always gave the same answer. No, gossip. He told me once, gossip will destroy your Krishna consciousness. He didn't say it stops it, slows it down. It kills it. Gossip destroys. And he said that to more than one of his servants. Yeah. Where was I?
Telex.
The books. What is the difficulty? So I went to Henry Street Temple in Brooklyn. As I said, it was July, very, very hot. July 22nd, I was initiated. So it was like here, summertime. It was one of those hot, hazy, humid weeks, you know. And of course, Prabhupada's there. This is 1971, It's 1971. So Prabhupada's there at the temple, so naturally it's filled, hundreds of devotees. The room was not nearly as wide, half as wide and a little bit longer. So it's packed with devotees. At Guru Puja, greeting the deities, Prabhupada's class. And because I'm with Kirtanananda, see again, you gotta find... I was right there, right where you are. I was standing right there because Kirtanananda was right there, and I was with him. So even though not just being just Bhakta for 3 months, I was right next to Prabhupada. And you asked seeing him, so that was the first time I saw him. You already have so many conceptions because is all I heard about for those 3 months was what Prabhupada was doing, what he's saying, what he's eating. This is how he lived in those days. Prabhupada just went to Russia at that time, you know. Anyway, so all these, but then when you see him, it's hard. He was like it is here. He's in color, everything else was black and white, you know. And his eyes were always wet. And different people would say different things. So many times my godbrothers would say, "Oh, Prabhupada, I didn't want him to see me. He sees how dirty my heart is." I said, "No, he doesn't." You know, he sees just the opposite. You know, so this was, but what I saw is he just had a very loving, transcendental love. You always felt there was love of Krishna there. And I wanted to keep seeing him. My eyes were just fixed on him, like most everyone in the temple room. So then he started praying with Vani prayers. Everyone gets down. So we're all standing and the room was packed. But now you're offering your obeisances, so that takes up 2-3 times as much room. So everyone's just like, and I was down there, and I'm like, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Buddhalisha Madhvakta. So I wanted to see him again. I didn't want to waste time being nice devotee. So I did that, I finished, and I sat up. And when I sat up, everybody else was still down. The person behind me was still down. And I sat on his head. He didn't think that was very transcendental. And he pushed me. And I was right there. And I literally flew on the Prabhupada's lap. So that was my first contact. And Prabhupada looked at me. And I got my first very good chastisement in front of... he said, So what is the difficulty? And I just sank back and put my head down. And he says that many times. Usually he'll say this Krishna consciousness is so nice. We chant, we dance, we take prasadam. What is the difficulty? But that's not what he said to me. It was different. The tone was very different. So we got off to a very good start. But I did dive for his feet, so I got a lot of mercy that way. And continue. But he shares with everyone. Imagine the person, Prabhupada, they open up Krishna Balaram Mandir. 50th anniversary is Ram Navami, 2025. Everyone should come for 50th anniversary of Prabhupada's home. So he put himself on the altar while he was still with us. That's an impossible thing to do. But Prabhupada did understand what he was doing, his responsibilities, and who he was, and how he could benedict everyone. So he took that, which that's also known as, you know, when you pray, they take sinful activities from you. So being on the altar is a very serious business, not something you want to do. But he said, you put me and my guru on Gaura Nitai's altar. So he did that while he was still with us. Think, going and greeting the deities. He's doing dandavats. And he's right there in front of himself, you know. So, yeah. No one. I don't know if you've ever seen in, Shima Sundar's book, at one point he asked Pradyumna, who I just saw a couple weeks ago, Pradyumna, I hadn't seen him for some years. Me, Pradyumna, and Shima Sundar, we were all with Prabhupada for a year. So we have a very sweet relationship. Anyway, he asked Pradyumna, who he travels around the world meeting religious leaders. He's met all of them, the Dalai Lama, this one, that one. And Shima Sundar said, have you met anyone? Caliber is like Srila Prabhupada. And he said, there's no one like Prabhupada. No one has that understanding and that surrender. The only way I ever knew Prabhupada didn't feel well, he would say, make khichdi for lunch. And that meant he didn't feel well. He wouldn't say, my head hurts, and my stomach, I have a cold. Never said any of those things. He said, make khichdi today for lunch. One day at the beginning of he called me in before massage, so I hadn't started his lunch. He said, I'm not feeling good. He said, don't make anything for lunch. No, okay, and in one sense for me that was very easy, because I didn't have to simultaneously massage him and think about the cooker on the stove for an hour and a half, steaming everything. So although it wasn't nice, I'm thinking, okay, no anxiety during massage today, because every day I would be in anxiety massaging him, worrying about the cooker. So then I'm massaging him, and I massage his head, and I'm massaging his back, and then he goes, he said, you can make khichdi for lunch. I said, Prabhupada, I didn't even start anything. He said, well, just khichdi. He said, whenever it's ready, it's ready. I said, yes, Prabhupada, no problem. Khichdi is very simple. He said, another 15 minutes goes by. I'm massaging. He said, you can make full lunch today. And I'm like, I said, Prabhupada, I didn't even start. That's okay, whenever it's ready, which is also not true. You knew he can say anything he wants, but you know what you got to do, That's like asking your wife, is everything okay? Yeah, it's fine. It ain't fine. It's never fine. So that's what I felt like, and I ran, and that was the goal. See, after massage, he would shuffle out. You'd see his footprints, oily footprints on the floor as he walked to the bathroom in his gamcha. And he would shower, bathe. While he was doing that, besides getting the lunch ready, I had to put all his clothes out on the bed, laid everything out, put the dhoti, the kurta, two buttons on the kurta, only left 2 buttons, copin, everything. Then I'd go to his desk and open up his compact mirror for putting the tilak on, put the chandan out, the little lota with the spoon in it and water. So all these things I had to do. And then I also had to get lunch ready while he would do those things, put his tilak on his body, say Gayatri, and perfection was when he's finished Gayatri, you're bringing his plate in. Not 1 minute. Because as soon as you know it's time to eat, what happens? Mouth, right? The water is flowing, your digestion begins. So if you don't have your food then, everything's spoiled. So he would say these things to you. One time, he called me in Vrindavan in his room. And he said, a first-class servant knows what to do without being asked. Now, he called me in and said that for a reason. He was just, apparently there was probably something I didn't do which should have been automatic, whether opening curtains, fans, who knows what it was. And he didn't say it he didn't chastise me, because he knew chastising Shruta Kirti, not a very good thing. He's going to cry, he's going to sulk, So he learned how to how to punish me like my mother. I told you my mother never yelled. She'd get quiet. That's how she punished. And Prabhupada finally started doing the same thing. He'd look at me, and that was it. That's all he had to do. And I knew. And then he said, second-class servant, you tell him what to do, and he does it. How many of you are second class? How many do things without being asked? Huh? See, this is... And the third-class servant, he said he doesn't do it or he does it begrudgingly. I love Prabhupada's English. That was another thing that you just couldn't get enough of, the way Prabhupada used the English language. You know. Skyscrapers. Right? Demon crazy. You can see it now, our democracy. Demon crazy, run by demons. Anyway, in bed at night, I'd massage him in bed, dry massage. Sometimes his back, but always his legs and feet. And he would just sit there. Sometimes he'd sit up and chant. Sometimes he'd lie back, close his eyes. And this is 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. So it's late already. So the one day he's in bed, this is in Vrindavan, and I'm massaging his legs. And he goes, do my fingers. So I grabbed that finger. He said, no, my fingers. And he started twirling his toes around. Because toes and fingers, same, right? In Hindi, I think it's the same word. So he laughed. I laughed, and I grabbed his toes. He wanted me to do this. Imagine he's telling you to massage his feet. Who could be so lucky? He's saying, massage my toes. 2 years went by. I'm massaging his legs, and I'm, massaging, and he stuck his hand out. He said, do my fingers. So I grabbed his fingers again. Same thing. So his memory, he could tell a joke over the course of 5 years. He'd start out on one spot, and years later, you're not thinking it, and he could bring up that thing he mentioned 5 years ago and just weave it into as a joke. Yeah.
So beautiful. That's all I can say. I don't have any other words. So beautiful. Everything.
I could tell you one really long story that took place over the course of 30 years.
Please, Prabhu.
Yeah. I told you when I got Brahmin initiation in Los Angeles in May of 72. It was 1 year I was in the temple. 1 year you got your sacred thread. So then I went back to New Vrindavan, and immediately I was put into the kitchen to cook for everyone, the deities, Radha Vrindavan Chandra, milk sweets, the whole thing, morning till night. So in New Vrindavan, in those days, 72, 73, New Vrindavan, it was a farm. There was no running water in the house, no bathroom in the house, no running water in the kitchen, no gas stoves, no electric stoves. It was a wood-burning stove. So it was very austere. And in the morning, we had choices. You could bathe at the creek. There was a little creek that ran by in Bahulaban. So 4 o'clock in the morning, in a moonless night, you're out there bathing in the total darkness. Anyway, I did that one morning, and then I go into the kitchen, and then I get all the plates and put them on the altar, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I go to grab my Brahmin thread. And it's gone. I've only had it for like a week, and it disappeared. Probably I bathed off in the morning in the dark, and that was the end of it. So I was heartbroken, and I figured everything's lost. I went up to Kirtanananda. He said, no, see how sincere you are by the tears in your eyes. You know? And he made a new Brahmin thread and said, it's fine. So now I'm Prabhupada's servant, right? And we're in Vrindavan during Kartik. And these are my first days with Prabhupada, first weeks. So he changes his Brahmin thread on Ekadasi. Every Ekadasi, he changes Brahmin thread. So I was told what to do, which in Vrindavan, like everywhere, Prabhupada had his cushion and desk. So you would just put the new Brahmin thread on the desk for him when he came out from the shower. And I'm sitting on the veranda, Radha Damodar temple, between sitting room and the kitchen. Those of you that have been to Radha Damodar temple. So that's where I sat all day, all night. That's where I sat. Chant. All I did was chant, wait for him to ring the bell. So now I'm thinking, Prabhupada's going to put on a new Brahmin thread. I'm going to take his old Brahmin thread. Because I was still upset. I didn't have the thread, you know. I didn't have that continuity, right? So I'm sitting and I'm watching. He puts on tilak. And then he always sat very straight. And he got big tilaks on and he's chanting. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get his Brahmin thread. I still do that in the temple. I get Gurnatai's Brahmin thread, get Prabhupada's Brahmin thread from the Samadhi. You know, you want these things. So, Prabhupada's sitting there. So he leaves to go eat in the kitchen. So I run into his room, sitting room, and I grab the Brahmin thread, and I got my thread on, no shirt because it's hot out and all. And I go to put it on. And he ripped every thread apart, or cut it. He completely broke it. Prabhupada knew everything. But he also knew me. And if you know me, he said, that's not stopping me. So I start tying all the knots together. It's useless. It's broken. There's nothing you can do to save it. But I tied it together, 6 strings, and I chanted with the 2 threads. And I was very happy. And then Prabhupada finished lunch, and he's walking from the kitchen back to his room. And I always offer obeisances every time you see him. 100 times a day, doesn't matter. You have to offer obeisances. He never said to me, you've offered it enough today. Never said it. Lunchtime, 10 times in 10 minutes, back and forth, chapatis, rice, every time. He never said, okay, you're done. You're never done. And my knees tell the story today. So he's walking by me, and I offer obeisances. And my head's down, and I see these lotus feet in front of me. He stopped right in front of me. And I get up, and he looks at me. He said, that Brahmin thread? I said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, bury it under the Tulsi plant. I'm thinking, he's not going to let me go with this, you know? Why is he doing this to me? And I didn't listen to him. I kept it. I put dozens of those Brahmin threads on the thing. He never cut one other Brahmin thread. I would give it to people all the time. Sankirtan devotees, give him a piece of Prabhupada's hair, give him Brahmin threads, give him... But that was the only one he ever cut because he knew I was taking it. Without his permission. See, that's the important part. Without his permission. So that was 1972. So 3 years later, Gaur Purnima 1975, we're in Mayapur, 500 devotees, biggest festival in ISKCON to date, 500 devotees in Mayapur. And one day Prabhupada gives Brahmin initiation, and I was the servant, so my job was sitting outside the door, and I would hand them the threads, you know, you take it apart, I would, as they went in, and they're all petrified, everybody's petrified to go before Prabhupada. So that was 1975. So then I wasn't in Mayapur for 30 years. So what's it, 1975? Now it's 2005. It's the first time I'm in Mayapur. And there's big festival, and they're having Prabhupada Katha and one, you know, what do you call, in the tents, you know, Pandal thing they had put up. I spoke, other devotees were speaking, and then I was sitting back down, and like 10 seats away from me, there's this godbrother. And he's like, he's Western or American, but he's living in Mayapur for years. And he calls me over, so I go sit down. He gave me some mosquito repellent. And then he says, do you know who I am? And I'm like, you know. I have so many devotees I've seen over the... And I said, I remember. I said, you're here in Mayapur, yeah? And he said, yeah. And he told me his name. He said, do you remember? I'm like, remember what? He said, we were in 1975. I said, well, he said, you were here, right? I said, yeah, I was here, Prabhupada's servant. He said, well, he gave me Brahmin initiation then. I said, okay. He said, well, do you remember what happened? I'm like, what happened? He said, well, I came to the front door of Prabhupada's room, and you handed me the thread. He said, but it was still all bound up. You Brahmins, you know how you get the threads in there. You have to be very careful how you undo them. You can make a mess very quickly and tangle it. So he said, you gave me the Brahmin thread. He said, and I got it, and he said, and I went into the room, offered obeisances, and I'm trying to undo it. And he said, I got frightened, and he said, Shyama Sundar was there. He said, so he said, I approached Shyama Sundar. I said, can you help me with the thread? And Prabhupada said, take it to Sruta Kirti. He knows what to do. 3 years later, I didn't get to hear that at the time, but he knew I knew what to do. I was very expert with Brahmin threads. I could tie them, untie them, do so many things. Anything but bury it under the Tulsi plant. So that was 30 years later. I finally got to understand the joke. And I got to understand Prabhupada's still present. And he was laughing. One of the things I've realized more and more, he may not have showed it a lot, but Prabhupada was always laughing at us. Because we were comical. I mean, like watching, the first steps of a baby. So that was us. But he was very amused by us, very happy with us. But I know he liked to sometimes make a little fun of us, yeah, because we were children, still children, but children. Well, then we were really children, yeah. Prabhupada's unlimited compassion, right? We have to stop soon, right? Yes. Okay, but I should at least answer your question. I'll tell you one. How is loyalty eternal? Your ever well-wisher. There's so many examples. Trying to think of which one. New York, 76, 55th, 14-story building, right? Govinda's in the ground floor. And yes. And Prabhupada's coming to the temple. So there was this one devotee, he blooped devotee. But he would go to Govinda's restaurant. He was Prabhupada's servant. He was a sannyasi. But now he had long hair, beard. And he wasn't very nice with devotees, but prasadam was good and cheap. And you could eat all you wanted. So he was still going to the temple to eat. But he would criticize Prabhupada, saying he spoiled my life. He said I could have been a big rock star. I gave my whole 20s to Prabhupada. He was complaining. So no one would talk to him. And he didn't follow any principles, all four of them, and as far as we know. He was eating meat. And so no one would speak to him. There was one Mataji that did. She was sympathetic. She thought he's a devotee. So when we'd come to the restaurant, she would just be nice to him, where others avoided him because they didn't want to hear offensive, aparad. We always hear that, aparad, you can't hear that. So then one day happens, it's lunchtime, and he's walking to the temple, and all the devotees are out front doing Harinam. And he goes up to the girl and he says, what's going on? And she said, oh, Prabhupada's coming. And now she's in anxiety knowing he's here, Prabhupada's coming, and everyone knew his mentality. And he's like, I just came to eat. And he was literally just going to walk into the restaurant. Didn't want to see Prabhupada. Of course, as fate would have it, right then the car pulled up, right in front. And, the devotees open the door. Tamal Krishna's there, and, all the big swamis are there. And Prabhupada gets out of the car. And they all see who's there. And they're trying to usher Prabhupada into the temple right away. And of course, Prabhupada sees him, and despite his long hair and beard, he knew who he was. And Prabhupada went up to him, and he said, you'll cook for me while I'm here? And Tamal goes, he's like, Prabhupada, he eats meat, He's eating meat. He's offensive and all this. Prabhupada, he doesn't hear what he doesn't want to hear. That he didn't want to hear. Doesn't want to hear gossip. That's gossip. What does it have to do with Krishna? Nothing. And again, Prabhupada looked at the boy. He said, you'll cook for me while I'm here? And he said, yes, Prabhupada, I'll cook for you. And that girl assisted him cooking for Prabhupada, the only person that would even talk to the boy. So that's Prabhupada's. Only thing you can do, service. As soon as you see someone struggling, somehow or other you have to engage him, because that taste can help. I don't know what happened afterwards, and there's many things like that. Prabhupada, once you're there, never give up on you. Yeah. And that continues. That's the guru. Otherwise, you're not guru. Anything short of that, you're not guru.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing these pastimes. I'm sure
Hare
everybody
Krishna.
had a wonderful experience listening to them. Yes? Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. If that's not enough, we have Prabhupada's slippers
Hari Bol.
that we travel with these. These are Japan Airlines slippers that he wore on Japan Airlines, obviously, when I was his servant, and I put them on his feet, and I took them off his feet, and here they are. So everyone can get... So whatever else would happen, at least that you can have Prabhupada's mercy, and these slippers that he wore.
Yes, but before we end, there's just one practical question we'd like to ask you. That we heard so much, we were so grateful that you manifested Prabhupada in front of our eyes. We could see him in our heart's eye. But I did want to ask that what's one advice you'd give to the next generation and future generations, especially like my generation, that us devotees, how can we deepen our relationship with Srila Prabhupada especially? Because we can read, all his pastimes and things like that, but how can we establish that connection? How can we please him? Please elaborate on that.
Did anyone's relationship deepen today?
Hari Bol.
This is how you do it. How do you deepen your relationship with Krishna? His pastimes. It's the first thing I did. When I moved into the temple, Krishna book had just come out some months before. It's all we did. We didn't know anything about God, what to speak Krishna. We didn't know anything. And the floodgates opened, and we have Krishna book, and you hear, like I said, his mother, his father, where he lives, everything about him. So this, I know many devotees tell me, like, this book, they say, has helped them so much deepen their relationship with Prabhupada. And, of course, other devotees, Jamuna, of course, out of this world. Shama Sundar's book is a fabulous writer and most exciting. So that's how to do it. And, of course, the other thing is service. Association is most important, You become what you associate with. So you have to pick what you want. We can say, I want this, I want that, but then what are you doing to get towards that? Yeah. So you have to do. Prabhupada, he invented that. Just do it. It wasn't Nike. They stole it. He was saying that before Nike existed. They would come into his room and say, all these plans. He'd say, just do it. Meetings didn't really exist, a little conversation. Just do it. Why are you talking so much? Yeah.
And lastly, what do you think is most important for ISKCON to continue and grow?
I see this temple. I wanted to say, I see how this temple's growing over the years here. Ditya, of course, Mataji there, all of you. It's a very wonderful temple. I came here for lunch prasadam, and they're very nice here. They don't force you to do anything. You know,